Apartment rents are coming down, and they are going to continue coming down for 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 more years. I'm Dr. Bill Connerly. I connect the dots between the economy and business. Today's discussion is about apartment rents. It will be useful to property owners, real estate developers, as well as tenants. The important thing to think about is, first of all, our history, and then I'll get into a forecast. So this data comes from the great website apartmentlist.com, the overall national average apartment rent, the 12-month percentage change in the average rent. And you can see that in the early years before the pandemic, low rent growth, just a hair faster than inflation, really not much to talk about. Rents went down in the pandemic. Some people had to move back in with parents. They lost jobs. But then look at this surge and why the surge happened and why it has come down to just barely growing and then falling rents is the main subject of this discussion today. Like everything else, rents are determined by supply and demand. Supply has not changed significantly, so we're going to look at variations in demand. One variation comes from people moving back and forth between apartments and houses. Some people are usually renters and some people are usually owners, but there's an overlap between the two. Some of the people who are usually renters aspire to home ownership. They're saving for a down payment, getting their credit score in good shape, and that's their destiny. Some people are owners, but thinking about renting, especially older people who are contemplating downsizing. One of the swings in demand that has not gotten as much attention as it should is what's going on with roommates. Census data on living arrangements for people 18 years and older show that a majority of people live with spouses or partners, significant others. Some people live alone, but look at the yellow area and the dark blue area. These are people with roommates or live with their parents. That is a discretionary situation, and people can go back and forth between this category, those two categories, and living alone. At this point, let's review economic history. We went into the pandemic. Some people had to move back in with their parents or get roommates, so rent went down because demand went down. And then we had stimulus payments, we had more generous unemployment insurance, other social welfare programs. In late 2020, demand for labor went up, but not all workers had come back, so wage rates went up. People had more money. I track deposits at banks and money market mutual funds by households, and over a 2-year period, deposits went up 37% in just 2 years. That was huge. People had money, so what they did, they ditched their roommates or they moved out of their parents' homes, and a few of them said, we can now finally afford to get divorced. Whatever the reason, the increase in rents was due to an increase in demand for apartments. The same population hardly grew at all. 2021 was the lowest population growth in a century. The change was people living without roommates, and their demand for apartments pushed rents up. There was a period of time where there was switching back and forth, people leaving apartments in the early stages of the pandemic to move into single-family homes. But by 2021, we were seeing surging rents and surging prices both. So a demand for more kinds of housing of all sorts. It was just increased demand. People had money, and with money, they said, I don't need a stinking roommate. What has happened since then? Inflation increase started rolling faster than wage gains. So a lot of people filled up the gas tank on their car. They bought groceries, especially eggs, and they paid their cell phone bill, and they said, oh, I don't have much money left over. Maybe I need a roommate after all. So people have been getting roommates or moving back in with their parents. We won't have the data for the details for quite some time, but the demand for apartment units has been going down, and landlords have been cutting rents. Now, there's a seasonal change in rents that we're in the midst of. January and February are the cheapest months to start a lease. I believe that even when we get into the peak months for new leases in the summer, we are going to see rents coming down. As a forecaster, I think that the United States economy is going into a recession. Could possibly be just a mild slowdown, but I think 90% probability we're going into a recession. My own forecast has us starting late this year, 2023, or early 2024. But then it lasts 6 to 8 months, and even after the economy starts growing, we will still be trying to dig ourselves out of a hole. So it's going to be a weak environment for a couple of years. So far, I've been talking nationally, national averages. Your mileage may vary depending on where you live, and I suggest that if you're thinking about making a decision, and I'll talk about actionable decisions in just a moment, if you're thinking about making a decision, look at your local data. The chart I showed you earlier uses data from apartmentlist.com. Zillow also has rental information that is available for free download. So do some homework. Now, what are these actionable implications? If you are a landlord or property owner, I think you have to accept the reality that rents are coming down. You're going to have to cut rents. You can do it in some ways. You can cut the listed rent. You can offer 1 or 2 months of free rent. You can stop charging extra for parking places, whatever seems to work with your own tenant mix the best. But you're going to have to face the fact that rents in most cases will have to fall. If you are a real estate developer who has been doing apartments, it's going to be tough. And I would encourage you to be very conservative when you do projections of what your occupancy will be and what your rents will be, because it's going to be a tough market in which to bring new properties into the market, unless you're in one of those fast-growing areas. Might be a little different in Texas and Florida. Although one of the things that scares me about fast-growing areas is they attract developers, and it's possible to get too much development even in an area that does need new units. Finally, if you're a tenant, my advice to you is ask for a better deal. If you're in the middle of a lease, you probably cannot get much, but if you're thinking about renewing a lease, ask. In some cases, the landlord may not want to be openly public that rents are coming down. Ask for a couple of months of free rent, especially if you've been a good tenant for a year. If you're negotiating a new lease, try to negotiate. And if the person across the desk from you does not have that authority, maybe you need to look elsewhere, because rents are coming down and tenants should get the benefit of that. I'm Dr. Bill Connerly. I connect the dots between the economy and business. I put out a monthly newsletter. It's a 60-second update on the economy in graphical format. I'd be happy to make you a subscriber at no charge. You can use the QR code to go to the website to subscribe to the newsletter. Thanks for watching.